Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's been a little while since I've sat down and filmed anything for YouTube. I think it's almost been like 3 to 4 weeks now, so it's felt a little bit weird, but I'm getting back into the swing of things. You guys may have noticed that I've kind of been inactive on my channel for the past, I think, like week and a half, and truthfully, I just need a little bit of time down for myself. I did film some stuff in the meantime that I was supposed to get up. I just honestly didn't have the time or the energy to really edit and get it up there, and I hope that you guys understand and you're still open to sticking around and watching all my other videos that come out now. Don't worry, those videos will still go live up, so they still will be there. I just need a little bit of time to myself. So today's video is actually going to be a little bit of a chatty kind of like life update, catching up with me, talking about things, and then moving from there onwards we'll go back into like the regularly scheduled programming. So what's been going on for the past month or so? Toronto left kind of like our stay-at-home orders and went into gray zone. We had our patios reopened only to find out that on April 1st, they announced on April 1st that we'd be going back into a lockdown again, effective last night. I think it was like the Friday at midnight or whatever, going into Saturday. So patios are now closed. They literally had 2 weekends to open and they're back now to being closed and nothing's open. Stores are still like, I think minimal capacity, like 25% or something like that, but we are still in lockdown. And we joke that as living in Toronto, we don't know any different, just because we've been in lockdown more or less since November, and it feels like we've just been continuously stuck at home this entire time. And truth be told, this is starting to feel like an actual new normal, since I don't know any different. Whereas all of my other friends who are living in different cities across Canada have been able to go out, go to restaurants, do things, see people, whereas we haven't. So it's kind of been a little frustrating for the past like 5 or 6 months or so. I'm not going to dive deep into that because I have my own personal thoughts on the effectiveness of the lockdowns. I think when done properly, they could be very beneficial, but it's been proven time and time again that they're not being done effectively here. That's why it's not working. But anyways, over the past few months, I've been feeling really down. I do get sad, which is seasonal affective disorder, and I don't know if it's because of everything that's been transpiring this past year. It has just like hit me so much more. So back in January, I had some moments where for a couple of weeks I literally didn't have any energy to even bring myself out of my bed. It's been a little bit hard struggling with it for the past few months or so, and I really think that it's a combination of just sad itself. I usually get kind of down in the wintertime, combined with just feeling frustrated because we don't know what we can and can't do with lockdown and the uncertainty of everything. So it's just all that together combined just put me in like a really dark space, and like I tried really hard to push through it. But lately I've been reminding myself that I promised myself I would listen to my body a little bit more this year and just give it what it needs. On days when it's not feeling good, I wouldn't push myself and just rest, allow my body to heal, reflect, and then once I am better, we can just jump right back into things. Hence kind of why I gave myself like a week and a half off with posting on here over the past week. Usually I try to have as much content ready as I can. Usually at the beginning of each month I film like for 2 weeks straight and get the entire month's worth of content done and ready to go and schedule, so that if I do have moments like this, I can kind of just like sit down, relax, and not have to worry about anything, because things will just take care of themselves. But this past month has also been quite tough, and I haven't been able to really get ahead of myself in regards to a filming schedule to get everything ready to go and scheduled, which is why I didn't have some stuff ready for you guys. But I hope you understand and that you stuck around long enough for my video this week. So much is still the same, yet changing at the same time. I think the last update that we gave you guys about our wedding was that we had postponed it to this year. So it was originally going to be on May 24th, I believe, of last year. Honestly, at this point, the date has changed so many times, I can't keep track of anything anymore. And originally the date didn't have any crazy significance to me or like any insane meaning behind it, but I just really liked May. It's my favorite time of the year because it's spring, nice and warm, just before summer, before it gets too hot, and that's the time of the year when peonies bloom. I know, as stupid as it sounds, I picked my wedding to rotate around peonies and florals. I'm sure people have picked their wedding dates for even weirder purposes, but that's what I wanted it to be. So we scheduled it for then, and then I think we booked it in at like 2018, like 2018. Yeah, so we like knew quite ahead that we wanted it to be in 2020. The year just sounded so perfect. 2020, right? Like when you think of like 2020 vision, it's like perfect vision. 2020 hindsight, like being able to see, I don't know. It just, the year 2020 sounded good. And then lo and behold, we weren't able to, so we pushed it to 2021. And then I believe this year is supposed to be like May 29th or something like that. Obviously that's about like 2 months away from now, 2.5 months away from now. And we will not be able to be rolling forward with our wedding date this year. We actually changed it a few months ago, and I don't think we got the chance to update and share with you guys on here yet that we've actually decided to postpone it again for the second time to move it into 2022. And actually the weekends that we wanted, which were like closer to the original dates that we had in 2020 and 2021, have already been booked up by other couples, which I don't blame them. I'm not mad about that. I completely understand if they have already booked ahead for 2022. It's not their fault that I can't get that date. So now we've moved it ahead to I think June 2nd, which is still fine. It's within the same time frame, so I'm happy with that. But it's just frustrating to have to continuously move the wedding over and over again. I can never really plan anything. I've just completely held off from planning things like florals, hair and makeup, a bunch of other things. And at this point, it's kind of getting to the spot where it feels like everything's just done out of futility. It just doesn't feel like it's fun anymore. And I kind of just want to do like a quiet little elopement just to get it over with. I know that sounds really depressing and sad, but seeing your dreams get like ripped apart once completely the first time was like really bad. I was like an emotional wreck when I had to come to terms that we weren't going to have the wedding last year, and then only to have it be like pushed away again for the second time just gets frustrating. So now I just kind of feel like I just want to have a small little elopement to get it over with and then just move on with our lives to other things. The unfortunate part is that we have so much money put down into deposits and down payments for certain vendors that we're not going to get back. So if we did do that route, we would actually end up losing a lot of money. And I know a lot of people are also in the same position as we are. It's not fun. So wedding planning, if you guys are getting engaged, I would hold off unless you are planning to do a very, very small intimate ceremony or an elopement. And just wait till things calm down a little bit until we all have our vaccines and it's safe for us to go out and about and mingle together again before you plan anything crazy. We have about 200 people invited to our wedding. There's no way we're gonna be able to fit 200 people in a venue anytime soon with the way things are going. So yeah, we're trying to stay positive, but going with the flow. We had originally thought that we could just go ahead with this tea ceremony this year. We signed our wedding papers in January of 2020, so we just celebrated our first year anniversary being legally wed together this past January. And now we're gonna have our tea ceremony in May of 2021 and then get our actual wedding huge celebration in June of 2022. It's been weird. It's been like a 4-year celebration. I know we wanted a long engagement of 2.5 years, but 4.5 years is pushing it. It's a bit much. So we're gonna try to move ahead with the tea ceremony if we can in May of this year. That's mostly gonna be dependent on whether or not everybody can get vaccinated on time so that we can get together in a larger group and it's acceptable, and if I guess like the lockdown restrictions kind of lighten up a little bit so it's not as bad for us to get together anymore. I just don't want to risk anybody getting sick or having to wind up at the hospital if we did host a gathering and there's somebody sick there and spread it. That's like my worst fear there. And the biggest reason why we wanted to do that is because our grandparents are getting older. Some of our older relatives are aging for sure, and we just want them to be able to be around to see us getting married before anything happens. Unfortunately, we had some personal things happen amongst our families in the past few years that has really just kind of like fast-tracked that for us, and we didn't want to wait too long for anything to happen for us to realize that they wouldn't be able to be part of it anymore. So that's primarily the reason why we wanted to have a tea ceremony right away next year. I think that's the most important part for them, and I think that they would like to be there for that. Otherwise, afterwards for the celebration part, usually they go home for that when we have like the dinner and the dancing, so it's okay if they're not there for that. But we just really wanted to have the cultural celebration together with their families as soon as possible. At this point, I'm also hesitant to see if that is going to work this year just because of the way things are going, but I will keep you updated if that eventually does work out for us. So in light of all this too, it's been like a really tough past couple of months, especially with all of the xenophobia and racism that's been going on directed towards Asian Americans. Yes, I'm Canadian, but Canada's part of North America, so we are technically still Americans as well. The AAPI community, which is Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, there's been a lot of hate towards them, especially since the pandemic started last year, and I'd be lying if I said that it didn't affect me at all. It's been like really heavy on me, combined together with everything else, like my seasonal affective disorder, and I felt like it's been putting me in like a really bad negative headspace for the past month or so. I didn't feel like it'd be right to carry on with my YouTube channel and just to post content regularly without addressing any of this, considering I'm very vocal about it on my Instagram account. I am very vocal about it in person with my friends. I've had lots of discussions about it with family members and friends as well, and I felt like I needed to also share my experience and my viewpoints with this on my YouTube channel, and to also kind of lend my voice to the issue just to make people more aware of what's been happening. Racism towards Asians, it's always been a thing. It's been around for a long time. I've definitely experienced it growing up as a child, and I still do now as an adult. But I think with coronavirus and this past year, it's really put like laser focus on Asians and xenophobia directed towards them in particularly, and I'll touch upon my experiences with that in the past year in a bit. But these shootings in Atlanta recently really like struck a nerve, and when I heard about that, I don't know, it doesn't affect me directly because I don't live in the States. I don't know those people, but you stop and you think like, that could have been my mom, that could have been my aunt, that could have been my grandmother, that could have been her friend, like anybody that you know. And I think it felt so relatable because yeah, obviously they are Asian. I'm Asian, I'm half Vietnamese, and I'm half Chinese, for anybody that's curious. So it really felt like a personal blow, and you truly won't ever understand what it feels like to be the victim of racism until you have it happen to you. You can try to empathize as much as you can, try to learn about it, but I don't think you can truly ever feel fear, the frustration, the anger, the disgust, unless you are that person that's experiencing it yourself. Not to say that you can't. I think that you can learn to empathize, to listen, and to be part of discussions, but it's hard for anybody to really step into your shoes until you truly experience it for yourself. So growing up, I grew up in Ottawa. It's predominantly like a white city. I didn't have that many Asian friends. I had a couple here and there growing up in elementary school. I actually had a huge discussion with Peter the other day about how growing up until I hit middle school, I didn't know that many Asian kids besides my cousins and my family. I am very blessed to have many cousins, so I got to spend lots of summers and weekends with them, and I never felt like I was an outcast with no friends that were similar to me. But in elementary school up to about grade 5, I maybe only knew like 1 or 2 Asian kids in my school. And then fast forward to grade 6, my parents put me into a French immersion school. A lot of the kids there were white. It was in a predominantly white neighborhood, different school from mine. So I was already removed from all of my friends that I had kind of grown up with and put into a place where I didn't know anybody. I don't think there were any Asian kids there, to be honest, now that I really think about it that much. And it wasn't until grade, I think, 7 and 8, I was put into a different school that had like a bunch of Asians, that I started to feel like I was comfortable. People understood me. The main reason I mean that like people understood me, a simple example, as a child growing up Asian in like a predominantly white school, a lot of the times my parents would send me to school with food that's not typical to, I guess, white people. Like I'm not always getting peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Actually, now that I think about it, I think I rarely got peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Maybe when I was lucky I got them, or like Lunchables, that sort of thing. But most of the time it was like home cooked food, and I would frequently get made fun of in school for, ew, your food looks disgusting. Your food smells disgusting. Do your parents just feed you garbage? I would never eat that. That's so gross. That makes me want to vomit when I look at your food. Your food literally looks like vomit, to the point where you start to feel so ashamed of your own food and your own culture. I would hide my food, not eat it. I would throw it in the garbage so that kids wouldn't see it. I wouldn't bring it home though, because if you bring home food to your Asian parents, they would ask you, why didn't you eat lunch? And you get a lot of trouble. So I'd throw it in the garbage so that my quote unquote friends and classmates wouldn't see, and then when I go home it would look like I ate it, so I wouldn't get in trouble with my parents. So, you know, playing that dichotomy there. But there are things like that. Obviously I got made fun of for my eyes. I still do get made fun of for my eyes now, even as an adult. Get told that my eyes aren't big enough. I should open wider when I smile so that people can see me. Personally, I think my eyes are quite wide for an Asian person. So when people say things like that to me, it's obviously a very racist attack, because like I don't have very like tiny eyes. My mom does make fun of me sometimes though and say that when I smile, my eyes kind of close up like little crescent moons and I have like Hamtaro eyes. If you guys remember, Hamtaro is a little cartoon hamster that was on YTV that I watched so much when I was younger. I was obsessed with it. But every time he smiled, his eyes kind of just like turned into like little crescent moons, and she thought it was really cute. So she called those my Hamtaro eyes. But on a day-to-day regular, I have, I would say, and I think, pretty large eyes for an Asian. So anytime somebody said something like, open up your eyes bigger, or they'd call me like a chink, or any sort of derogatory slur, it really hit home. I never felt like Canadian enough to be a Canadian around my white friends, and then growing up at home, sometimes I never felt Asian enough to be around my Asian family, because I didn't speak the language fluently. I didn't understand all of the customs. I was growing up in a Western culture where the lifestyle was very different from how my parents grew up. To give some sort of like back context as well, my father came to Canada, I think he was a teen. I think he finished high school here and then went to university. I can't remember exactly how old he was, but he came here for school by himself without my grandma or his parents. So he kind of did things on his own. He didn't have a lot of money. My mother is literally a boat person. She was a refugee from Vietnam. She was escaping the communist war there. They were really well off in Vietnam. They escaped, got rid of like all of their wealth. Well, the government took all of their wealth. Family was like literally separated into like camps, internment camps, while they were coming over. They've been to like Japan, China, made it here when she was like, I think like 6 or something like that. She was really, really young, literally escaping a war at that age. I cannot imagine what that life is like. So her childhood was significantly different from mine. And when they arrived here, they literally had like no money to their name. She grew up in a household of 7 other siblings, her parents and a couple of other relatives in like a really small house. So they are, I guess I'm first generation being born into this country, but she kind of grew up as a child. So her English is really, really good. When a lot of my friends meet her, they're actually caught off guard and surprised by how well spoken she is. For somebody who wasn't born in Canada, she's fairly well accustomed to, I guess, most Western cultures and like mannerisms. But growing up here, because they were escaping their country, they did want to retain as much of their own culture as possible. So she was raised in a very strict family where it was constantly reminded, like, this is what we do in Vietnam. This is what we did back in Asia. And she did use that line a lot with me growing up. And I constantly was mad. I rebelled. I was like, well, this isn't Asia. This is Canada. This is how we do things here. So I never really felt like I fit in and was like that perfect Asian child for my family, nor was I the perfect Canadian for my friends that were white here. So as you can see, there was a bit of an internal struggle. I've heard many stories of people repressing themselves and I guess like their Asianness growing up, and I was actually chatting with Peter and he said he didn't really understand, like, how do you hide your Asianness? Like, how do you just turn it off? And I told him it's not really like repressing as if you're pretending you're not Asian. You're repressing, for me at least, was repressing a lot of like personal mannerisms or like hiding things from my friends so that they wouldn't think that I was weird and not the same as them. Like, I was never allowed to go to sleepovers as a kid growing up. I don't even think I had my first sleepover until maybe like high school, when it was another Asian friend. We were working on a project together at my house. We were doing like a science fair poster and we were working really late. It was due the next day, so my parents let her sleep over at my house, but I was never allowed to sleep over at anybody else's house. And anytime I got invited to a friend's birthday party that involved a sleepover, I would tell them, no, like, I can't. I have piano lessons the next morning, like really early, just to like make up for the fact that my parents wouldn't let me, because I was ashamed that I wasn't allowed to do the things that they were allowed to. So there's a lot of repression in the sense of like trying to hide things that make you different from other people, similar to like the lunch situation. I would throw out my lunch so that the other kids wouldn't see what I was eating, so that they wouldn't have a reason to pick on me, if that made sense. And like I really identify when people say that they tried to hide the fact that they were Asian and that they were different so that they wouldn't be identified as being different. But now growing up as an adult, I kind of regret doing all that, because I felt like I missed out on the opportunity to really retain a lot of the culture for myself. and I wish I was able to retain a lot of that culture so that I could pass it on to my children in the future. And I definitely plan on it as soon as I have children, to immerse them in as much Asian culture as I can, because I am so proud now to be Asian, to have the heritage, to have all these stories, and to do all of these things so differently. I think that's what makes everybody so unique, by having their own culture and the way of doing things. So anyways, fast forward, moving to Toronto. It's a very, very multicultural city here. Significantly more multicultural than Ottawa. Not to say that I felt more at home, but I felt very at home in Toronto, surrounded by other people who are also Asian, whether they are Chinese and Vietnamese, or they're Korean or Japanese, doesn't matter. I just felt more at home and more amongst my people. So it felt great. And then fast forward to this past whole year with the coronavirus. I think it's a safe assumption for me to say that with this rhetoric that's been passed around for the past like 4 years or so, it's definitely set a precedent in a lot of people's minds that it is okay to be a racist, without outright telling them go be a racist. You're just setting the precedent, setting an example that these sorts of attitudes are accepted and encouraged, to the point that when people started naming things like the Kung Flu virus or like the China virus, you start to give them these ideas that the virus is China's fault, and that all Asians are responsible for it, whether or not they are from China or not. That's besides the point. It's not any Chinese person's fault that this virus originated from China. The virus could have originated from anywhere, it just happened to be there in the wet markets where the food was. But to give it a name with such a derogatory tone to it obviously sets a tone in people's heads that like, oh, it's the Chinese, right? Like you already have people saying things like, I'm not gonna buy it because it's made in China. And to further perpetuate this idea, it just makes it really frustrating. I've never felt unsafe walking around Toronto until the virus kind of like imploded in Canada last year. I remember at one point I was walking through Chinatown really early on in April of last year, trying to buy some groceries because we were running out of some supplies of some ingredients that we cook with. The roads were empty. There were a couple people on the road, and I literally feared for my safety because I had already heard that people were like vandalizing Asian grocery stores, smashing in windows at restaurants, just being really racist in general. And I knew that even though I wasn't doing anything wrong, I looked like that. I looked Asian. Not gonna lie, I am Asian. I look Asian to racist, and I would just be a target, an accidental target, because I happened to be in their path as they wanted to do their racist acts. And I actually feared for my life a few times when I walked outside. Like I considered like, okay, good thing we have masks on. Should I also be wearing sunglasses and like wearing a hood over my face so that people can't tell what I look like? And I've never, like I said, once ever feared for my safety in Toronto, especially with the amount of shootings and like gang wars that we already have to begin with. I just never felt like the way I looked would be a definitive target of an attack for somebody else. So as soon as I realized how I was feeling and the reason why I was feeling like that, I clued in so hard, and it was like a smack in the face, like, holy shit, this is how some other people live like every single day. And I was like, this is not right. Like you can't live like this. I think it's gotten better within the past year here at least, but it's definitely not perfect. Literally one of my friends was like kicked in the back of his knees at an intersection a couple of weeks ago by a racist person because he's Asian. And we see these things happening constantly all the time here. It's definitely not as bad as in the States where there are shootings, but that doesn't mean it's okay. Any level of racism, whether it's like a microaggression, a quick slur, I don't know, like a petty attack on somebody, it is a racist attack and it shouldn't be tolerated. I think it's important that we all try to speak out as much as we can about it whenever we see anything happen to anybody. Like I said, I've never once been afraid for my life, but I've definitely experienced some racism in Toronto. I've stood on the side of sidewalks with my friends before and have had people literally run up to us and say stupid things like ching chong or like ni hao, when obviously they know that it's for some sort of like reaction from us that they're expecting, and they think it's funny when it's like ching chong means nothing. Ni hao means Mandarin, but why are you guessing that I speak Mandarin? You don't even know what my ethnicity is. Like, if you're white, do I just run up to you and speak any white language? Like, am I gonna start speaking like German or Russian to you and assume that you understand? No. So you shouldn't be doing the same thing to me either. Big thing that I hate here in Toronto too is that whenever you get picked up by Ubers, they instantly have to ask you like, so what are you? Like, where are you from? And then I tell them like, well, I'm from Ottawa. And they're like, no, you're not. You're Asian. So I'm like, no, like I was born and raised here. And they're like, oh, but like, where are you from? And it's not a question of like it being racist, but it's the point of like, why does my race always have to become the first topic that you gravitate towards whenever you're having a discussion? And it just starts to get infuriating. Like, there's a difference between asking like where I'm from, which is like geographically, to what my ethnicity is. If you're genuinely curious about my ethnicity, ask. If you just start asking where you're from and I'm like, well, I'm from here, and that doesn't suffice your answer, you just keep digging and digging, it starts to get frustrating. So yeah, that's just kind of like a huge pain point that I don't like, that happens a lot here in Toronto. And now that we don't have a car, I don't really Uber as much anymore, which is nice, but I can only imagine how frustrating it can be for a lot of other people who have to constantly go through this like line of questioning as if you're being interrogated by the police. But yes, I don't know. I don't really know where I'm going with this. I just kind of wanted to share my thoughts a little bit and ramble, and to say that it is very important, if you can, to support your local Asian businesses, friends, families that you know of. Check in with them, see how they're doing, if they're okay. Even if they haven't been impacted firsthand by this, it definitely does weigh a toll on a lot of people, and you just want to see how they're doing and make sure that they're doing okay, and let them know that you're an ally and that you support them. If you ever notice anything happening in public, be outspoken. Point it out, call somebody out, or be there for their moral support if you don't feel comfortable calling the person out who's being a racist. I know it's hard for a lot of people to be extremely like proactive when it comes to things like this, and it's been very heavy recently in the news, all the negativity and like the really shitty things that have been happening in the world, that the only way I felt like I could help contribute was to add a little positivity to it. I've actually put together 2 guides on my Instagram of ways to support local businesses that are Asian owned in Toronto. One's a restaurant that if you want to order takeout or dine there once you can dine again, highly recommend. Some of these are my favorite restaurants in all of Toronto and the GTA area, so there's like a wide range of what you can pick from. And then I also have a second one, which is a shop in case you want to purchase any items or support some other local small Asian businesses that are selling things. Mother's Day is coming up, but just for you to take into consideration the next time you want to shop local and small and support some like small businesses that have been struggling over this past year, not only due to the pandemic, but also because they're Asian and they might just, their businesses might have just been hurting because of people's current attitudes and the climate around the world. But yeah, so I want to touch on that a little bit. I'm also going to include some links to resources down below in the description bar if you want to do some more reading and learning, and to just kind of like unlearn a little bit more about the model minority. That could be a whole other discussion as well. I'm not trying to turn this into like a political discussion on my account here on YouTube, but I just wanted to talk about it a little bit because it felt wrong to not mention or discuss any of it. But yeah, that's just kind of what's been happening over the past month. Why I haven't been super active on YouTube. Things have just been like quite heavy, and I've just been trying to find ways to cope with everything. But yeah, that's essentially it. Spring is right around the corner. It is officially a lot warmer in Toronto. It's not as warm as I would like it to be yet. We had a couple of days where it reached 20 degrees, and oh boy, I was completely basking in the warmth and in the sun. It was beautiful. I know the actual warm weather is just gonna be right around the corner. I heard that we're going to have a slightly longer and warmer spring this year, so very excited for that. But thanks for sticking around and catching up with me and kind of like listening in on my little life update and chit chat and what's been going on with me recently. I am in the process of filming a bunch of new videos this week for my YouTube channel, so hopefully we'll have some content ready for you guys to start going up again as regularly scheduled. Don't worry, I am not going anywhere. As always, if you guys have any questions about anything that I kind of like touched on in the video in regards to just like the wedding, the racism that Asian Americans have been experiencing so far, and anything else in my life, feel free to drop them down in the comments below. I'm gonna try to get back on schedule. Excited to share my life again with you guys. But thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys have an amazing day as always, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.